Sri Lanka's parliament is now going to decide on the new president. Finally, Gargi, after days of protests and whatnot,
right.
now finally they'll find someone to replace Gotabaya Rajapaksa, acting president Ranil Wickremesinghe, the former Rajapaksa line, and now the independent Dulas Allah Peruma, as well as the leftist Anura Kumara Dissanayake are in the fray.
They were nominated by the parties through a secret ballot on Tuesday, and analysts say that the front runner is Ranil Wickremesinghe, a six-time former prime minister who became the acting president after his predecessor resigned, but is despised by protesters who see him as a Rajapaksa ally. In fact, the protest might again pick up if he does become president. The 73-year-old Wickremesinghe has the backing of Rajapaksa's SLPP, the largest bloc in the 225 member parliament. As acting president, Wickremesinghe extended a state of emergency that gives police and security forces sweeping powers, and last week he ordered troops to evict protesters from the state buildings that had been occupied.
We have well, in fact, Sajid Premadasa, who has stepped out of the presidential race. In fact, he was one of the popular ones, Gargi. And now that he did a step down yesterday out of that race, he stepped out. He has put out a tweet saying, irrespective of who becomes the president of Sri Lanka, it's my humble and earnest request to the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and to all the political parties of India, to the people of India, to keep helping Mother Lanka and its people to come out of this disaster, is what Premadasa has put out in a tweet. What's going to be interesting is what's going to be his role, Gargi, going forward. Is
That's
he
right.
In the running now for the Prime Minister once the President's decided? To get more,
well,
we have Shrija with us.
All right, Shrija, so tell us what's going to happen today? When will all this, take place? And also, if Wickremesinghe does emerge president again, the protesters are going to take to the street?
Well, yes, that's something that's going to happen, because we understand from the protesters as well as various political analysts and activists, what they say is they've been trying to keep Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe out of power for a very, very long time, because they have managed to send, if you remember, it all started with Mahinda Rajapaksa, and after which we saw one after the other family members go, and then we eventually saw Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa also flee the country to Singapore. So all this while they have also been targeting, and the aim has been, as far as protesters, Sri Lankan citizens, they say that they do not want Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe to continue, or even for that matter to be in power, because what we did witness, last week, the minute when the protesters or Sri Lankan citizens received the news that he's going to be made the acting president, we did see what really happened and what transpired on ground. We saw how, the protesters managed to storm his office as well. And there were several rounds in terms of tear gas being shelled for over 2.5 hours or so. So we understand that the protesters, or the protests at this point in time, will not quell whatsoever. The protesters say that they will continue with this protest, and they will continue to occupy the old parliament as well. So it becomes very crucial. Today is a very, very big day for the Sri Lankans, because what they say is, there are several parliamentarians itself, not just the protesters who really want Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe out of power, but you have several of the opposition leaders have, they've unanimously supported. Even Mr. Dulas Allah Peruma offered to support him as well. This is only to keep, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe not to really have an edge over the other contenders. But as far as political analysts say, yeah.